Brandon Wainerdi is here tonight. And Brandon, you know Brandon from Talking Bay 94, which is an amazing Star Wars podcast. If you're not listening to it, I don't know what you're doing with your life, but you should get on it. Brandon writes for StarWars.com. Brandon writes books, does all these cool things. And Brandon most recently is one of the authors of the Star Wars Encyclopedia that I'm holding up right here for this camera. I'm not joking when I say this is a big ass book. It's heavy. It came in the mail. My kids tried to pick the box up. Like, Dad, what did you order? I'm like, don't worry about it. It's fine. Brandon, thank you so much for coming on tonight, certainly to hang out with all of our 9 cents. But let's dig in. Let's talk about the book.
Yeah.
How did you get involved in this particular project? And tell us a little bit about the process of certainly collaborating. And just so everybody knows, because, you know, our Star Wars community is fantastic.
Yeah,
this
read
book
them out.
was written by a whole bunch of different folks. Dan Brooks, Megan Krause, Kelly Knox, Amy Ratcliffe, Amy Rickow, Brandon Wainerdi, I've heard of that guy, Dan Zier, Adam Bray, Cole Horton, Patricia Barr, Daniel Wallace, Ryder Wyndham, and Matt Jones. A bunch of those are folks that we've had on, have been friends with in this Star Wars space for a long time. What a great group of people to work with. Yeah. So tell us the story about how you got to be a part of this and, you know, some of that.
Yeah, it all started around Star Wars Celebration London. I had done some work for the official Star Wars Celebration guidebook that was DK and timelines related, and that kind of put me on the radar of DK. I got introduced by a friend, and it kind of just spiraled from there. They were like, "Hey, do you want to work on a project? We'll email you after Celebration." And so I was like, "Sure, yes, I would love to." And it kind of just went from there. And really lucky that I've worked with some really great people that recommend me. And then the process itself, you just named a bunch of really great people. The people near the end that you mentioned are the people that worked on previous editions. So there's a lot of bones that were already kind of created that we built on. So then the first 5 people I think that you named are the ones that worked on the most recent edition. And from there, we kind of updated old editions, right? Obviously, like Obi-Wan Kenobi has had a lot of different editions since the last one came out, which I think was Last Jedi-ish time. And then we added every new entry and we updated everything. And it was a really big team effort. We all kind of divided and conquered. And it was a really kind of a blast of a summer.
Oh, no doubt. And that's something that I want to dig into for a minute too, because like you said, like the Star Wars Encyclopedia has been around for a while. There have been multiple versions. So you guys didn't come in and build this thing from scratch. Like there was a structure there was a format there, but there was also a lot of things to add. And I know when you and I were emailing back and forth and talking about, you know, parts that you worked on, I think you said, you know, a lot of the stuff from Rise, like you had a lot of connection with, you know, working on those parts. What is it like not only to collaborate with multiple people? I know y'all all live in different places. You know, it's not like you got to sit around a conference table for, you know, weeks on end and go, hey, you know, it's not a writer's room. It's not Saturday Night Live,
right?
Which would be awesome if it was. But, you know, not only talk about collaborating with those folks, but also building on something that exists.
Yeah. And so this volume used to be, I believe, called Ultimate Star Wars. So that's what we built on.
Okay. And
from there, it really became us each choosing our own lane or being assigned our own lane, right? So like, for instance, I play video games, but I don't have like a PS5 or a Xbox. So I haven't played the more recent video games. And so people that are experts in that took that over, or High Republic people took that over. And so we all kind of took our swim lanes, and then a lot of communication between us, though, of just how are we approaching things? What's the tone? What's the, you know, challenges we're facing, or the ideas that we have, or, hey, you should think about this. And like all those people you just mentioned are the biggest, coolest people ever, really. And so just being a part of that mix, even a little bit, is so awesome to be able to send an email or DM or text and ask their advice or ask their opinion, right? This is my first Star Wars book. And so it was pretty new ground for me. And it was it was a summer. I got back from Celebration end of April, and that summer then was really kind of the brunt of the writing. And it was a really kind of beautiful collaboration. And you know, I watched, I think, Rise of Skywalker 20 times writing this, you know, and so it really became this kind of beautiful thing. It was like summer camp sort of, except all virtual.
It's good work if you can get it, if we're being honest.
Exactly. I'll take it.
Yeah, for sure. So let me ask you this. These books have been around for a million years. I had the blueprints when I was a kid in the 80s. I had, the cross section, the cutaway books. You're a younger fella than I am. Were these books a part of your growing up and your early Star Wars stuff to have, visual dictionaries and, some of these kind of things that helped you when you weren't watching a movie dig into Star Wars? Is this something that was a big part of your growing up Star Wars life?
Yeah, and I think DK as a publisher is kind of the foundation of that. I actually, again, I don't want to keep saying my brother got married this weekend, but my brother got married this weekend.
Hey,
And
it's a big deal. It's worth
my
saying.
aunt was there, and my aunt used to work for DK back truly 25 years ago. And so for Christmas, we would always get the visual dictionaries, the art, and the cross-section books, because that was who she worked for. She would always send them to me. And that was, I just like poured over them. They were like Bibles. And it was those, and then Del Rey put out those essential books. It was like essential chronology, essential guide to droids, all that stuff. And so both of those combined really kind of like fomented like who I was as a Star Wars fan and what I loved, and being able to, again, to contribute in just like this small way is really, really incredible. I really cannot believe that I have been able to work on it even in this capacity. So
100%. Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I was going to say, that was the question I was going to ask was, as a Star Wars fan, as a longtime Star Wars fan, like, what is that feeling like to be given that opportunity to write for something officially for Star Wars, where it may not be something that is advancing the story, for like canon purposes and whatnot, but still to be like, be able to write something for Star Wars to educate the masses more. How does that feel?
It's scary and it's empowering. And I mean, so the first experience I ever had with that was Star Wars Insider. So during COVID, I reached out to Insider and I transcribed a few of my Talking Bay episodes. I was like, hey, here's how this would look if I interview this person. And then I wrote it as an Insider article. And I still remember I went to a Barnes & Noble during COVID. I wore a mask and I went and bought the issue that my name was in, and I was like, this is like, and I think still, even not more than the book, but that I was like, this is kind of a culmination of like being who I am as a fan or as a creator or whatever it is. And then being able to continue that and being able to still be trusted, right? Going from Insider and then Insider and .com and Insider and .com and now these DK books. It's I really still can't believe it. And like truly I could stop tomorrow. They'd be like, hey, you could never write again. But like I have this like body of work, quote unquote, that like is it really kind of beautiful. And who knows how good it is, but it's mine, and it is very cool that exists. And again, Insider and .com and these DK books are all stuff that I looked at when I was 9 years old, like obsessively. And so
fun fact,
kid,
when that because you had been on with me a couple different times before you had written that first Insider, and when I knew that was happening, it's maybe the first time I've gone to the local comic book shop across from my house. I know that hurts Chris's feelings. I'm sorry.
No, you got it.
But I went and bought that one because I was like, I know the guy that wrote a thing in that.
Thank you.
And I still have it because I was like, my friend did that. And like, I knew who Kelly was, but like Kelly hadn't been on my show yet. You had been on I was like, somebody I know did a thing in a Star Wars magazine. It's like, I need to go get that.
Thank you.
So it's even being able to, live, through somebody else's experience. Pete wrote for Galaxy magazine back in the day, in the 90s, and some just again knowing people that, and being able to do this show has allowed me to get to meet so many more of y'all and get to know you. But every time I see it, and we'll talk in a minute, I know there's another one that's been announced that you're working on, and every time I see it, I'm like, hell yeah, my friends are winning again, and it's so fun. So kind of tagging onto that question about, what does it mean to you? You worked on some specific parts. My question is, were there any fun field trips involved? Was there any field work? Did we get to go to the archives?
No physical field trips. I do, no matter what I'm writing, I always feel very proud of myself when I'm using, you can see my bookshelf behind me, sort of.
Yeah.
If I can use any book on that bookshelf, I'm like, wow, I did it. Like this, the reason I hoarded all these books for all these years is that
Paid off,
eventually
baby.
I could reference one of these books. And I was able to do that a few times, and that was like the best feeling when you're like paging through trying to find something, you find it, and you're like, I'm using this actually for like an official text. And so I think Field Trips more was digital and reading wise, because so I worked on Rise, and a lot of the stuff I worked on too was the comics talking about. And so I read pretty much every current Marvel Star Wars comic, which is fun. And I have Marvel Unlimited, which I love. And I was able to just like reread or churn through or read for the first time all these things. Because the goal with these is to, for instance, there's a good example is a character called Tommaso, right? Who is part of the Spice Runners of Kajimi and has only really appeared in text, right? So he's appeared in Poe Dameron Freefall and then in a few like outlying things. He actually just appeared in Wednesday's comic. And so when something like that happens, I'm like, oh, like that's my boy, that's my friend, because I went through and I read every single time he's ever been mentioned, right? And you go through and I write down every trait that he does, everything that he does, everything, because you don't want to just go off of a summary or an explanation from a different website, whatever it is. You want to go straight to the source. And that's for me a lot of fun because I get to just like read comic books and take notes on them as if they're historical, right? Which they, I mean, for this purpose, they really are. And so you have to take them all at face value. And so those kind of journeys with these characters and tracing them through books and comics or video games or the background of a movie or whatever it might be was a lot of fun.